One day, over 240 years ago, Mozart sat down to write a piano sonata, and he got off to a great start. And he even continued that great start into a wonderful second movement. However, partway through the third movement, he accidentally wrote a piano concerto instead. Now, what do I mean by accidentally wrote a piano concerto, right? This is, in fact, a piece for solo piano. No cellos, no violins, no oboes, no bassoons are invited to the party. It is a solo piano piece. Well, to answer that question, we need to first talk about a key moment that occurs in almost all classical and many of the romantic piano concertos. Near the end of the first movement, we're talking about after the orchestras played the exposition, the piano players had a chance to play the main theme. They've done a development section together. Sometimes the piano takes over, sometimes the orchestra takes over. They play against each other, they play with each other. We go back to the main theme. We close it out somewhere near the end of the piece. In fact, possibly 3 chords before the end of the piece, the orchestra almost always builds and lands on this chord. So you're in this key, and the orchestra's going to build and do some crazy chord. Who knows exactly what it is? Different chords. They're going to drive to here, and this is potentially the third to last chord in the piece. You could go to the piece be over. However, what makes a concerto special is that you get to that third to last chord, you land on it, the orchestra is holding it out, and then we get a cadenza. A cadenza is a little moment for often the piano player to play completely solo for a while, a little more flexible, often really virtuosic. Tell the orchestra to shut up for a little bit. It is your moment to shine as a soloist. And with that knowledge in your back pocket, let's dive into Mozart's sonata in B-flat major and see how Mozart stopped writing a piano sonata at some point and started writing a concerto. This is a great, charming little tune for the third movement of a Mozart sonata. Often we expect these third movements to be a little more lighthearted and simple and gentle, and this really fits the bill. Then after that cute little opening melody, like most pieces, we expect at some point to move on to something different. Check out this next tune. For those of you who are familiar with Mozart last movements, you know that most of them are in rondo form. We do a section, we do something different. We go back to the main section in the same key, we do something different. We go back to the main section in the same key. If that's true, we are expecting at some point to get to an F7 chord, which will then take us back to, let's see how Mozart does it. There we go. Now, if you're worried that you missed out on the concerto, don't worry. We're not there yet. However, in our rondo form, we did our A. We went away from our A section. We went back to our first section. Now we expect this C section, which is often more different than anything else we've heard so far. And Mozart does exactly that by going to a minor key. Here. And even though we're in a distant minor key with tons of chromaticism, we're still expecting, if this is a rondo, to make it back to our A section in the original key of B flat. So just like before, we're waiting for a kind of gateway F7 chord. Minor. And for a second, you're like, did we just return to the main theme in a minor key? Nope, not quite there. F, F. And there we go. We made it back to our main melody again. So even though things got weird, we even did our original melody in a minor and then in a weird major key, we still got to the F7 chord and made it back to our main theme. A, B, A, B. We are back to A again. Now at this moment, if we're doing a 5-part rondo, Mozart just needs a couple lines of closing material and the piece is over. Now if we're doing a 7-part rondo, he needs to go back to the B section we had earlier. Well, what does he do? The B section. That's actually what we kind of expect from a 7-part rondo. However, it is at this moment where he needs to return back to the A section that Mozart accidentally writes a piano concerto. Okay. And that's our chord. You have a 1 chord in the key of B flat that is a B flat chord, but the 5, the F, is in the bass. So it's not a nice resolved 1 chord, piece is over. It's a 1 chord with 5 in the bass. And then the piano gets to play cadenza. So yes, I know it's been a piano the whole time. However, this is the piano playing the cadenza. And then just like lots of cadenzas, we're going to take some of the ideas we had earlier and then elaborate on them even further. If you've ever played a concerto before, there's this moment where the orchestra has to re-enter, and not every piece handles it the same way, but it's always kind of a dicey moment because the piano has been free and kind of without rhythm in some of those big scales often, and you have to find a way to come back on beat 1. So what often composers do is maybe you trill, and the conductor can give beat 1, or like in this case, you just play vague fermatas, you look at the conductor, and the conductor goes, and you hit beat 1 together. That's what he's doing. He's letting the orchestra have a chance to re-enter at the end of the piece. I love those bass tones that were just now added there to sort of help emulate that orchestral sound, the more full, rich sound down there. So from a form point of view, we have a 7-part rondo, A, B, A, C, A, B, cadenza, become a concerto, return to the A section kind of through that cadenza, but then really truly return to the A section when the orchestra would re-enter it in the cadenza. And then just like a good concerto, there's a few lines here that sort of round out the piece, and the piano and the orchestra, or in this case, the piano and the piano, end together.